and why your retirement fund is being stolen from under you. The fact of it is a lot of people are part of funds where management and fees are eating away and they're not getting the growth, but also stock market and funds can be risky, can't they? The biggest growth, the one area that a lot of growth in super at the moment in Australia is people creating self-managed super funds and buying property in it, right?
Yeah, without a
Because
doubt. And
you weren't allowed to do that at one stage, and now the government's allowed it, and people are jumping on board. Yeah, well, look, properties double every 7 or 10 years, and the beauty of the property in super is once you retire, you can sell that property and you pay zero
that's
tax.
free. It's unaccounted growth, I guess. That you're able to, if you get the income as well, it's also tax free. So that's the I guess the golden egg at the end with self-made, like with the super side, is the tax free status.
Now, funny enough, Dave was talking about the equity, how you can't use your equity, and if we could change that fact. So what I was going to say is there's a secret that people use to actually be able to use your equity from your property and super. And even if you joined that program, did those three, and then quit and did nothing else, you're still set to be better than 99% of Australians when you retire. So you're already 1 year of your life in our program. Puts you in the top 1% of Australians. If you think the pension now is bad, 10, 20 years time, it's going to be even worse, a lower standard of living. It doesn't go up, it goes down, unfortunately, because we don't have enough workers to cover it. So you've got to take responsibility. Okay, guys, me and my team are about to go live. So make sure you grab your beverage of choice, sit down, and you're in for an amazing show. Okay, hello and welcome. George Markoski, your host, and I've got Aiden Kelly, my co-host. Hello and welcome, Aiden.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes. So since last week, a lot's been happening since last Thursday. It's fascinating because now with Trump in power in America, we got daily news, and some of it's interesting, some of it's scary, but it's definitely a lot of daily news. Now, the interesting thing, CoreLogic data just came out. And since interest rates have dropped, property prices have rebounded and started going up slightly. So
quick.
I know, very quick. We've actually, auction clearance rates have gone up and property prices started going up, which is fascinating because we didn't drop much. But the market is very receptive to this because there's a lot of people that have been waiting for this because they know that the next few rate drops is going to create a massive boom. And some people are trying to get in a little bit early. That's all. Like all of us, we're all trying to get in early too. Because I think, look, for the people watching, if you want to get involved in real estate, the number one thing I can say is get in early. Because really, truly, the thing about real estate is time in the market. The longer you have a property for, the better it is. And the bigger it becomes, the more income it creates and everything else. It just compounds. And how to have more time in the market is getting in early. Investing in properties like a tree. And, when's the best time to plant a tree, Aiden?
Well, yesterday.
20 years ago. 20 years ago. But what's the second best time?
Yesterday.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
And I imagine, George, for everyone to be ready for this property, increase that we've seen, having your finance ready and all those things lined up. Structures are very important to have all that stuff ready to go, because I guess if you don't have that, you're getting left in the dust.
Exactly. And Aiden, you're an expert when it comes to superannuation.
Yes.
And you're licensed to talk about it because not many people can actually talk about super. Because they're not licensed to talk about it, and you are. So when we're talking to you, we're talking about the truth. And tonight's topic is the great superannuation heist and why your retirement fund is being stolen from under you. That's the premise. And the fact of it is, and part of the reason why this is happening is a lot of people are part of funds where management and fees are eating away and they're not getting the growth, but also stock market and funds can be risky, can't they?
volatile, and particularly like what you said before about Trump. Just have a look at the share market over the last 2 weeks, and it's like a yo-yo going up and down, and it's horses for courses, but you really want to understand that. And I mean, another sort of area that, George, you look at, look how many big super funds have merged in the last 12 months, last 24 months. Like Mercer, for an example, Care Super. I mean, we're working for some members now that just to try and get their current data from the fund is almost impossible. Let alone, how do we think they're running their investments, and what kind of research they're doing? If they can't do the basic fundamentals of administration, what else is slipping?
Yes, and I think people need to take control and take responsibility of their future financial freedom, because the government's not going to do it for you, and the big super funds aren't going to do it for you either. And
No.
look what happened. Look what happened in Europe, though. There was a massive fund, and they bought billions of dollars of Nvidia just before DeepSeek got released, and then suddenly it crashed. They dropped $1 trillion, and
Yeah.
they got into a lot of trouble, because that's the
Yeah.
thing. They're like, Nvidia, let's get in, but they got in at the wrong time.
Yeah, and look, some of Australia's largest super funds, for example, Australian Super, that they were a fund that had some exposure in those areas, which you wouldn't, without looking under the hood properly, you wouldn't probably fully comprehend the level of risk they're type of taking with those type of investments. And I guess another recent example was Australian Retirement Trust, and their ethical investment option. Let's just say investing in some things that aren't exactly ethical.
Right. The ethical investment wasn't quite ethical, right?
No,
Yes. Yes.
we're talking sort of weapons manufacturing and things like that. That is
Yes.
quite
That's not
clearly
very
not
ethical at
ethical.
all. No, no,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And the biggest growth, the one area that a lot of growth in super at the moment in Australia is people creating self-managed super funds and buying
Yeah,
property in it, right?
yeah, without a
Because
doubt. And
you weren't allowed to
the
do that at one stage, and now the government's allowed it, and people are jumping on board. And
yeah, it is increasing, and the ATO the ATO actually keeps all this data. It is a bit delayed in a couple of years, typical ATO fashion. But what it's showing is that we've a lot of the new trustees coming in for self-managed super funds are now between that 30 to 40 age bracket, which is very interesting, because George, you go back 15, 20, 10, even 10 years ago, the self-managed super fund space was largely your retirees, and that would want to be investing in super and in shares and things like that. It was, but that's certainly the shift has changed, and the data shows that a lot of the new trustees are in the 30 to 40 age bracket, and in the actual underlying investments, it's property. And yeah, still some of those funds have the mix of shares and things, with leftover money. But what the data shows us is a lot of people are taking that control, going, we like property, we feel comfortable with it. We might have, with rates gone up where they are, we might have lost the ability to do property personally. Okay, what about super? And that's what the ATO data is showing us, without a doubt.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think it's wonderful that the government allowed us to take control of our super and actually direct it more, because when it first came out, your company was put money away, you didn't even know where it was going or what it was doing. And we've got a lot more
Mm.
control now. And I think having control is good, but obviously you need the right person, someone like yourself, to help guide you and help you that.
Well, without a doubt, and look, I always say, fantastic structures, but executed, incorrectly, and it's disaster. So part of our process to do the analysis, to do the strategy, work it out before you set these structures up, to make sure that it's going to take care of itself. And what are your requirements? What is the cash flow going to look like? And certainly, obviously, cash flow calculators, George, that positive property to help push all that together.
Mhm.
But yes, getting it all done properly, and certainly, as you said at the start, self-managed super funds are, a financial product, and to be able to deal with them, you need to have a license to do that these days, to make sure that you've been signed off to understand the benefits and the disadvantages. So
Yes,
very
yes.
important. Yeah.
And the thing is, I've been investing in property and helping people for 20 years now. And I've been very frustrated with lots of people that are financial planners that set up super funds for people and get it wrong,
Mm.
and just don't know a bear's trust from an arse's trust. And you know what I mean? Literally. And that's one of those things. And it's frustrating, because the way you do it, you make it really simple. And that's part of the whole thing. What we look for is circular safety. I'm always looking for the best people that can do a job exactly right,
Yeah,
because this is people's futures that we've got. Now,
agreed.
yeah,
Yeah, and George, probably one other, difference is I also do this myself too, not just professionally, but also personally. So I'm following, which is, I'd probably say is uncommon in the industry because, it's typical shares and things like that. But, yes, I do that as well. But I'm following the same strategy in terms of self-managed super funds, taking debt out in super as well. So it's not just, to be able to talk about it and advise about it, one thing, but also to have the practical experience as well is, real life experience. I think we can all agree is really important too.
yeah, absolutely. Now, I've noticed we've got Dave Huggins here, one of our members. Hi, Dave. And what I'd love to do is,
Hi, George.
hi, Dave. Good to see you.
Yeah, good, mate. Hey, Aiden, how you doing?
Dave?
Where are you located, David?
I'm in Melbourne.
You're in Melbourne. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, I'm looking behind you. I'm thinking you're not in Queensland or the cyclones. You're not going to drop out.
No, not at all. Quick cheerio to all our Queensland people. Hope they're doing okay up there.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Agreed.
people already ask some questions, but what I'd love to do is I'd love to go through a case study and talk about Dave and your journey along yourself and super, just so people get a bit of a feel behind the scenes exactly what it looks like, because I think that's important. And what I'm going to do once we finish, everyone hang on and listen in, because I'm going to tell you a secret way of actually getting more money and more property in your super. Because with super, once a property goes up in value, you can't actually use the equity. And I've got a great way you can do that. So, Aiden, did you want to, Dave?
Look, Dave, maybe take us back 12 months ago, or just over 12 and a bit months ago when we started working together. Where were you, and what were you? I very clearly remember the first time we chatted, but take me back to where you were 12 months ago.
Okay, I'll go back to the beginning because some people probably be able to relate to this. So I actually started setting up my self-managed super fund in 2023. It took 9 months to set it up, which was quite a long time, but I can honestly say that it was worth every bit waiting for it, because it's been a game changer. And the reason I say that is because we're talking about industry funds before. And even though I don't know the ins and outs of super like Aiden does, what I do know is I was able to log in to see my balance on my industry funds, and it was going nowhere. So I knew something had to be done. George touched on the government, and no doubt they want to do this so that they don't have to pay out pensions, et cetera, et cetera. That's why we've got to cash in on it. And like I said, it took a while to set up, but it's been a game changer, securing that first property through self-managed super fund, with Aiden. So that's been able to tick away since late 2023, if you like, and all the way through 2024. And as we know, with interest rate rises of 13 last year, interest rate rises, it was a challenging year for everyone, but that was still able to tick away in the background. And in that time, with that all ticking away and salary sacrifice contributions, I'm actually almost ready to secure a second one in my self-managed super fund. We're negotiating the contracts as we speak. So, like I say, in the space of, you might as well say 18 months, to almost have two secured away to just set and forget for your long-term future it's a real relief. Like I said before, looking at the balances before in the old industry funds, it was going nowhere, and it was pretty hard to see any benefit for the future in that. But at least now it's tucked away, and for people out there that haven't got a self-managed super fund, do it. Just do it. I mean, we're still going to keep going ahead with the process of purchasing properties outside of super. There's no doubt we're all doing that. But if you can get the super going as well, my God, what a game changer.
Yeah, and I think that was where we, running through the numbers, the scenarios of, what the benefits would be for you to make those extra contributions into super. The tax man's providing you extra money back for that personally, and then the caveat being that with those extra contributions, we've built that fund up that allows us to talk to the banks again in super to say we've got more contributions coming through, we've got more liquidity now, that allows us to secure another asset. So that I guess that's a process, George. Everyone that we work through is we're here to help with strategy. So we look at contributions, what the effects are, cash flow, and model all that out so that we make sure that before you start talking to the bank, before you start talking to, about these, about contracts, we work it out before we get there. And design a strategy to suit everyone as well. It's an individual strategy. Everyone has a different strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, one thing about Aiden, you also a qualified mortgage broker as well. So
yes,
you understand that side, which couples very nicely together, right? It's beautiful.
it does.
Now,
yeah.
Now, what I wanted to find out, Dave, is your property in Super. Where did you buy that property?
Okay, so the first one's Caboolture.
Caboolture.
So,
Yep.
yeah, Caboolture, that's Cassowary Court. So hopefully that stays safe through our current environment. But
yes, because it's in a bit of a cyclone area at the moment.
it is absolutely. So hopefully that comes out unscathed. But yeah, that was the first one. The second one I'm securing is in Bannockburn in Queensland.
Yep.
So
Caboolture, do you know how much it's gone up, how much you paid for it, what it's worth now?
yeah, it's gone up about 100,000 already.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I got in at a good time too. So as you said, George, there's no time like yesterday. So it's still a good time. Get in quick, guys. And yeah, the growth has been really rapid, and it's awesome. It's just so comforting to know that you can look in the background and see that sort of growth. It's amazing.
I'm very curious. I mean, you did 100 grand in what, about 18 months, year and a half?
Yes. Yep.
And
Yep.
normally in your Super, how much would have you made over that sort of period?
Oh, just trying to remember back now. I reckon, or to give you a bit of a ballpark figure, I had not a very high balance in there at the when I first started my self-managed super fund. The balance wasn't great, but now if I'm looking at these two properties, both valued at roughly 500K each, there's $1 million sitting in super before retirement. So compared to the old balance that I used to look at, and now I look at the balance plus the two properties, with time up our sleeve before we retire, that we've still got that extra growth growing forward. So if they're worth 500 each now, in another 10 years' time, when that retirement age comes around, they're going to be probably double that.
Yeah. Well, look, properties double every 7 or 10 years. And the beauty of the property in Super is once you retire, you can sell that property and you pay zero tax.
Free.
Tax free.
It's an extra uplift on the growth. It's unaccounted growth, I guess. That you're able to, if you get the income as well, it's also tax free. So that's the I guess the golden egg at the end with self-made, like with the Super side, is the tax free status.
Yeah, look,
absolutely.
I mean, yeah, it's great because then you can go, okay, do I choose to have all this income tax-free, or do I want to get a massive bunch of cash tax-free, get rid of all my debt and be totally debt-free in my retirement? Because that's the sort of options you can have, because the super properties can get rid of your debt on your normal properties.
Yes,
then
absolutely.
Yeah, the sacrificial lamb strategy, why if we have to sacrifice an asset to clear some debt off on another, why wouldn't we sacrifice one that, potentially is tax-free?
Yeah, and absolutely. And I guess when you get to that stage, you look at the overall picture and work out what's going to work best for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's good having a bit of debt.
There was another interesting thing I learned from Aiden through this journey, which would be good to let the viewers know, is I've got a older property outside of super, and what I didn't know until I spoke to Aiden, that when you turn 55, if you sell a property, you can actually use downsized payments towards your super on top of your salary sacrifice. So with that older property, if I was to sell that when I turn 55, I can use a portion of that to go again outside of super, but also a portion of that can be a downsized payment, which doesn't come into play on top of your normal super balance at the end. So as we know, I think you can have up to 1.9 in your super. That downsizing payment is on top of that. That's not included in the 1.9. So these are little strategies that I didn't know until I spoke to Aiden, and that's why it makes it all worthwhile to really get into that self-managed super fund. If you don't have it, that's why it's a game changer. There's so many little secrets about it that we don't know that Aiden can fill us in on, and in the long term, it's a no-brainer. It's a winner.
Yeah. So it's 1.9 million in pension phase. So you can move 1.9 million into this pension pot. Now, if that pension pot grows, it's fine. It's still counted for. You can only move 1.9 million into this tax-free pot. So I guess the goal is, like David said, you got asset sales personally, and you're looking for a way to increase your contributions or increase your super balance to generate that tax-free income later on in life. That can be a valid strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd imagine in 10 years it's going to be different anyway. It's not going to be the same.
Of course.
I mean, they're constantly changing. Sometimes they make it higher, lower. They keep changing their mind.
It's one. I mean, George, it keeps me in business every year with the laws changing, because it's a different strategy every year.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to keep on top of it, because you got to sort of, as you go forward, keep on top of it and know what you're doing.
Yeah, and look, that comes down to every year with anyone we work with. At minimum, there's always a yearly review to understand what's next, what's changed, what's happening, and what are we building towards.
Yep,
And
exactly.
I think another important thing there too is, even though we're going to have changes, we're still going to come out miles in front, regardless of what those changes are, because we're already that far in front now. Even with changes that the government do, we're still going to be way ahead of everyone else that hasn't done it. So that's the one thing to keep in mind,
I totally agree with that one.
And maybe, George, with all your contacts, maybe you can reach out to the government in the next election and say, can we use our equity to benefit out of self-managed super fund? That'd be a game changer too.
Dave, look,
Yeah.
I realise my political connections are pretty weak, because I know a lot of people in politics, and I know quite a few people quite well, really well. And when they wanted to change the land tax in Adelaide, I reached out, had a chat, and people said, "Oh yeah, we're going to do this and do that." And in the end, they did what they wanted to do.
Yeah,
that's
the government,
right? Just what they did. They did what politicians do. They said, "Yeah, George, sure, we'll look into that." And then they just did something different, right? So it's lovely. So the minimum amount you need, Aiden, in super.
Yeah. So look, this number changes around depending, ASIC and that have their own view. It's around that 180 to 200 mark is really, particularly if we're, as a general rule of thumb, if you're buying a $600,000 property, you need a 20% deposit at minimum. So that's 120,000 plus stamp duty and costs. So, and you always want, that safety money, George, as you said, a little bit of money left behind in the fund, etc., to cater for the running costs and things. But it also comes down to your contributions too. Now, most people these days, because we've had super for compulsory for many years, most people have the balance. It's that, do we have enough income from a cash flow point of view, and also from the bank's perspective? So I'm finding these days it's actually more the income side, not so much the balance is obviously important and critical, but it's normally the contribution piece for most people.
Exactly. And the fact of it is, if they sit down with you and work out a plan, you can usually fine-tune a few bits and pieces to make it work, because you might not on paper look good now, but what we can do is we can spruce you up and make you look good on paper and change a few things. You put a few more contributions in. There's salary sacrifice. There's lots of different ways you can skin a cat. And at the end of the day, it's a matter of doing that. Exactly. Now, funny enough, Dave was talking about the equity, how you can't use your equity, and if we could change that fact. So what I was going to say is there's a secret that people use to actually be able to use your equity from your property and super, and that way you can get more. So, because I'm always of the opinion, when you buy a property, you don't want to sell that property, because it keeps going up in value. However, properties and super are slightly different, because you can't use the equity. So when you buy a property in real life, it's a beautiful thing, because people come join our program and they normally get one or two in their normal name, and then they get one in super. That's normally what happens. So you can try to get 2 or 3 properties off the bat in the first 12 months, because that gives you a nice solid foundation. And even if you joined that program, did those 3, and then quit and did nothing else, you're still set to be better than 99% of Australians when you retire. So you're already 1 year of your life in our program, puts you in the top 1% of Australians. But if you stay longer with us, we're going to get even higher and put you in the 1,000%, right? That's what we want to do. And to get you there, sometimes it takes a bit of a different strategy. And we've got one of our members doing this at the moment. So what you do with your property in super, once you've made enough equity, you can actually sell that property. And then you can chop up the 2 bits of equity put that the cash sale back in super, and then convert one property into two. And then what happens is they grow, then you get one more property, convert that into two, and then you got three, and you can keep doing it that way. And in the background, your super's growing in the background at the same time, so that way you can accelerate that, and we can actually accelerate. And this is where people can get 5, 6, 7 properties in their super over a 10, 20-year period, especially if you're buying the top 100. Because if you're not buying the top 100, you're not going to be able to do this because you're going to get a property and it's not going to do anything for a long time. But if you buy the top 100, like David did, and it's already gone up 100 grand the first 18 months, you can see you're going to start getting the equity. So that's a beautiful way of doing things. And I guess now we're going to answer some questions and go in rapid fire and do some questions and answers. Okay. Let's go through the questions that everyone's got. Okay. What are the key benefits of investing in property through an SMSF compared to personal ownership?
That's right. So superannuation tax rate is maximum 15%. So, there's more income after tax from a capital gains perspective, but also it's a different structure. So, again, if you've got the cash on your contributions going through, that's what's used to help service the debt and service the property. So the difference being, and again, the self-managed super fund debt doesn't affect what you do personally either, George.
Yeah,
so it doesn't hinder you for personal growth.
That's right. But also the property in your super is asset protected from the government.
Yeah.
You don't need asset protection. It's totally protected, correct?
Yeah, well, superannuation, George, is for everyone's retirement, and as soon as the courts, decide to impose that in terms of litigation and things, the more the government has to pay, which is counterproductive to the idea of super.
Yeah, but this is the fact. The fact it is, we're not going to have enough money for all the people that are retiring because we've got less young people for old people. Our population is aging, and if you don't take control over your future, if you think the pension now is bad, 10, 20 years time, it's going to be even worse, a lower standard of living. It doesn't go up, it goes down, unfortunately, because we don't have enough workers to cover it. So you've got to take responsibility because you can literally change, excuse me for a sec, you've literally got to take charge of that. Now, there's the next question was saying, what types of properties can be purchased within an SMSF and are there any restrictions?
Absolutely. So it has to be a single acquirable asset, meaning that if we're taking borrowing out, it has to be one asset. It can't be two titles. You can't have, an asset or, where a lot of people, George, and this is not, where we saw, many, many years ago where people were buying these off the plan apartments and coming to us going like, we've got issues with titles and car park on a different title. So it has to be a single acquirable asset. And generally for most of the banks, it has to be, residential in nature. Now, obviously, you have to rent it out at market rate. It has to be rented out to an unrelated party. So it's a pure investment property, which again, you wouldn't be part of this journey if that's what you weren't doing. So, yeah,
you can't buy a property and live in it under your super, and you can't rent it out to your kids. Correct?
Correct. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. But also, it has to be a single part contract. So what that means is you can't actually buy a house and land and put that in super because it's two parts to the contract. Because you've got a land contract and a property contract. What you need is completed property. And obviously, that's what we help people find, right? And the other thing I would say is, getting a brand new property in super is very powerful too, because you don't want to have the maintenance issues and all that sort of stuff when you're first starting out your super. It's complicated enough as it is with all the extra paperwork that you want to do.
Yeah, it comes with the warranties and the peace of mind to know that, particularly from a capital perspective, we're always going to, any of our strategies is always going to have sufficient capital left behind for those moments that, come unexpectedly every now and again. But certainly, that is, I guess, the benefit of the super fund is with what we do is we make sure that in the very worst case, now it might be part of your strategy to put more money in like Dave to increase to go for another property, but we really want to make sure it takes care of itself at the very worst by itself. It might be part of your strategy to put more in, but if things change personally, we want to make sure that's protected. And protection is another. George, we talk about insurance being a part that we have to review when we're doing this. And you talk about unlicensed and other people that play in this space when they shouldn't. They're the things they're missing. They're not doing the strategy on what happens if you lose your income. You lose your income, you lose your contributions, you lose money in super that's helping service. So, it's part of our process. We have to look at this. Very important.
Yeah, look, Aiden, you're very thorough, and I guess that's why we've got you as part of the circle of safety, because I want to make sure that we look after our members and do everything right. You know, we're the sort of company that wants to get everything right, because when you're playing with your financial future, you can't afford to get it wrong, right?
No.
You've really got to cross every T, dot every I, and do it properly. Andrew just asked the question, what would you consider enough equity? So he's probably thinking about if your property went up in super and you sold it. Well, the way I see it is, my philosophy is I don't want to sell any properties unless I'm doubling them. So even in your normal name or something else, if you're going to sell a property, you only sell it if that's going to give you the ability to buy another two. And you want to make sure, go through finance, everything, and go through everything else and do your thorough research to make sure you can do it. Because sometimes what happens is people get caught up in their borrowing capacity, even in their real life. They've got a certain amount of properties, and sometimes you can offload one and get two instead. Well, that's worth it, because if you've got one that's getting very low return and it's going to hurt your borrowing capacity, that's what you do. So the only time you want to sell a property, if you can get two. There's no point selling one property and getting another one, because then you've swapped one for another and did all this work for nothing. Okay, we have just commenced with Aiden, and commenced this process. We aren't looking back. Nice work, Adam. Fantastic. Excellent.
Yes.
There you go. So that's in a nutshell. And what we're going to do now, we're going to go into our private group. We're going to switch off the live stream. So thank you everyone else for watching. I appreciate it. See you guys next Thursday. We're going to go in our private group.